IT, are you ready?
Ready.
Oh.
Kansas County Truth and Taxation Public Hearing to order. Tonight's meeting is about talking about the proposed budget. Well, actually, the budget was proposed back in August or July or something like that. Tonight is a time to go over the last details of the budget. We cannot raise the levy at this point, we can only lower it. And so the information we're gonna get tonight, and there is gonna be a public comment period if somebody wishes to come to the podium once Kelsey is done presenting, the administrator. You'll have that opportunity, and we'll have you come up to the podium and state your name and your address, and then you'll have your questions that we will try to answer for you. So Administrator Baker, if you're ready to proceed, we will get started.
Okay, good evening, Kelsey Baker, Kansas County Administrator. This was included in your board packet, but I'll put it on the screen for the people who are here attending. I'm just gonna go over a short presentation. At the September 5th board meeting, when you approved the preliminary levy, we approved 5% levy for 2024. A lot of those numbers haven't changed. However, I'm going to just really preface what's driving the budget are the 2024 wages that we updated and the board approved at that September 5th meeting. So tonight for the Truth and Taxation, just a reminder, this is a time for public comment on the budget that's being proposed. It's not a time to dispute your valuation of the property. That is the second meeting in June. The Board of Appeal and Equalization, that is the time then you would come and talk to the county assessor's office. If there are questions on estimated market value or homestead, again, our county assessor will have that time to speak with you.
And you brought up the April opportunity for your valuation, and
Yes.
I'm going to take this opportunity to remind you the best order in which to do this is first contact the assessor. She's out in the hallway tonight. Then you must go to your local jurisdiction. So if you live in a city or you live in a township, you must start there, or you aren't able to come to the county's Board of Equalization. So that's the order in which you do it. The assessor, your local jurisdiction, the county, and then there's one more opportunity after that, but we hope it never gets there. It's called tax court.
So I thought I'd be as transparent as we can with the 2024 budget. So we have an IFS, that's our financial software. That was the budget report that was included in your board packet. From there, we have it's identified as a net, but that's really the gross levy. That's that $44 million number, $44,035,282. The county program aid that we received from the state for 2024 was $3,215,555. That these dollars directly go to offset our gross levy that gets us down to our net levy. Our net levy for 2023 was $36,362,370. So how do we get there? That's a lot of the questions. It's basic math. As I was meeting with a commissioner last week, that's exactly what I said. This is basic math. But what's a little bit different this year, and we'll go over in past years on where we've used reserves, but we're going to be using landfill and our general revenue reserves. The board authorized to use up to 850,000 of those. And then we have a health insurance reserve that we are going to be using 800,000 of those reserves. And we have about 1.4 in there currently. And we'll be using 800 to offset some of our health insurance reserve or health insurance costs because we did the health insurance reset that the board approved also at the September 5th board meeting. In 2023, for going into 23's budget, we have $1 million with carryover with wages, so that will also be going towards the 2024 budget to offset those numbers. My understanding when approving the 2023 budget, it was talked about if we would have done a 1 or a 2% increase for full-time staff. So we put some cushion in there regarding wages if that would have been done. It really worked in our favor because we didn't do that. And instead, we just restructured our wage scale. So those dollar amount will just be able to move forward and carry over into 2024 that will offset the overall levy. So once you put all of those numbers in there, we get a net levy of $38,169,727 that equals a 4.9% levy for 2024. So this is the page we'll end with when I ask for approval on the 2024 budget, but I really wanted to lead with that because it lays out where we're using our reserves and our health insurance reserves and the percentage of the levy that I'm recommending for approval and the dollar amount for the net levy. So going into some of the budget challenges, long-term and short-term, we look at many different things. I've been here 9 months, so I'm trying to get a quick and dirty overview of the budget this past year with lots of changes that have happened, and I'll say positive changes that I would stand by with wages and health insurance for our employees. Long-term, we always want to look at revenue. Not all departments can bring in revenue. Some bring in more than others. So public safety will bring in law enforcement, human services, public health, there's some revenue. But you look at administration, we don't bring anything in for revenue. So we look at the dollar amount that we can bring in to help offset the costs. Long-term, and I think this could go into short-term, is the rising cost of personnel. I think we're seeing that. I think we're going to see, though, a Business Journal article came out that we're going to see wages leveling off going into 24, 25, and 26. So I do believe that. So I think the adjustment that we did on the wage table was aggressive, but I think needed, and so that will just set us up for the future then. I go into a little bit of state aids, LGU, different dollar amounts that we get, funds that we get from the state. Long-term, we're always looking at state and federal mandates. We always say at the county level, the buck stops with us, and that's very true. If there's a legislative change that comes from the state and the county has to fulfill it, that's a mandate, and we have to do that, and we have to find the funds and the resources to do so. Short-term, I think that really was a challenge, but was a positive challenge, but will be a challenge moving forward is the American Relief Plan dollars. So once we start spending those down, that will affect our interest rates because how much money we have in the bank. So that will affect it. And then that will affect it because that's the revenue we got in. So that will affect the 2025 budget. Health insurance increases. We did such a good thing for employees. However, going into 2024, we'll have to do an RFP for our health insurance, and then 2025 we'll have new rates and numbers for that. I think as always, and this is, I don't want to sound like a record player, but workforce shortage, staffing costs, material shortage, delays, equipment purchases, some of that. And so we just want to keep an eye on that, on if we're doing building projects, if we're doing maintenance projects, if Public Works has, we're seeing that paying the year after, prepaying, things like that. And so it's just to be mindful and cautious of that. One other thing I wanted to add on the short term was 2024 elections will be happening. So we do our best to budget what the costs will be for elections, and I think we should be fine based off previous election years, but that's something to keep in mind as well. So the proposed budget summary is, like I said earlier, we will be spending down the landfill and general fund reserves. The CPA, the county program aid, I know some commissioners at the table here have done a lot of work on that and it's securing those dollars from the state so we don't hit those numbers where we did about 15 years ago where they cut, was it 75%? We lost a lot of county program aid. And so then you see those trends, 2009, 10, 11, the counties had a very high tax levy. And then when we got this program aid back, the levy amount started to decrease a little bit. Some building expenses, which we touched on at the last board meeting. Like I said, ARPA monies that will be spent in 2024. The public safety aid dollars, those are in the fund 880. In the IFS report, you'll see that if you look through that. We received a good amount that will help offset our capital equipment fund, Fund 55. That's also in the IFS report. The health insurance cost, this is offset between employer and employee. But overall, our health insurance increase was a 9%. That's a very good rate. However, we're at that rate because we were locked in at that rate. We were guaranteed through our broker on that. This is just a good chart, or a chart that shows kind of where, as you can see, our general fund is our largest fund. And then we have our Health and Human Services Fund, solid waste, road and bridge, family services, building bonds, things like that. It just kind of breaks it out for more of a visual report. So some 2024 budget goals, so inflation of equipment costs. I'd like to take a deeper dive into that on how we're utilizing the equipment we're purchasing, and not just heavy equipment as in public works, but the vehicles that we're using. We're always short fleet vehicles, whether it's at the downtown office or at the Health and Human Services building, because we have a lot of staff that travel throughout the state or within the county for work purposes. Costs for staffing and workforce. One of the reasons why I think we did such a positive thing for the wages is A, we listened to the employees, but B, we approved the FTEs going into 2024 budget. Now, for me as a goal for 2024, I'd really like to analyze and look at how many FTEs we have at a county level and then break it down. Are we being as efficient as we can be? Should there be more cross-training? And so I'm not saying we're gonna cut any positions, but we might not have to refill a position through fruition or retirement or something like that. So I just want to make sure that we are accurately have enough FTEs for the work that we're doing. We might see in some departments that we have maybe 1.5 FTE more than we should, or we might see that we are short 1.5 FTE. So I think that's something, and we talked about this at the department head meeting this morning, that we as a group are actively going to be looking at the FTEs that we have within the county to make sure that we're working efficiently and being good stewards of the county dollars. And then again, being not only working and looking towards building and maintenance projects, but being conservative in the mindset. We're not looking at building a new structure across the street here for $25 million. If things are too costly, we'll maybe look at it differently, but I'm a true believer that if we kick the can down the road, it's just gonna cost more down the road. So how can we do something differently and pivot as a group and still complete the project? Looking ahead, I thought this would be a good slide to include to let you know all the wages. The increases that we had for full-time, part-time, overtime, and then we did include FICA and para. So the total though, for 2023, the full-time wages was $29,960,000. That was not included in your board packet. But I just included the 24, 25, and 26. So this is automatically gonna be already plugged in to 25's budget. So I'll say Karen Anderson and I work is once the board approves the 24 budget tonight, we're looking ahead at 25. And looking at projects, what will we complete? We'll have a really good analysis. Typically, that's how I will work is we'll have a really good analysis by May and June when we start the 25 budget. So we'll be able to know, because these wages are already set. These wages also include the COLA that we're proposing. Some questionable things, though, I will say this, you're still looking ahead, still today, December 7th, 2023, is we are still within negotiations. And so that's always up in the air with COLAs, but I feel confident and solid that we'll come out with a unified number that will be presented at the next board meeting, December 19th. One thing I think we can do is stay consistent with wage market studies, not wait 5 years, keep looking at it consistently every 3 years. If we have to look at it mid-year, I think that would be something that we could bring to the board and maybe do internally, or bring to the board and see what a cost would be to have it done through DDA or Baker Tilly or and outsource that. Like I said earlier, is to analyze the FTEs, kind of do a deep dive on where we're at with that and the size of the county, the cases that we have. I think it could surprise us. Not that, like I really want to make sure staff who are listening or who are in the room, I want them to know we're not looking at cutting positions, but we need to analyze, are we being as efficient as we could be with the amount of FTEs that we do have? And then the last thing that I think would be looking ahead is conducting a strategic planning session with the county board, starting there and kind of looking at what are our short-term goals, what are our long-term goals, and how do we want to continue moving Candy County forward. So this is a good slide that just goes over our levy history. And I should have, that's proposed was 2024, that was a 5. But like I said, we'll be asking a 4.9. For this year, 2023, it was 2.9. As you can see, we only had 2 other years, 2019 and 2017, that we were at a 4. All the other years were under a 2%. And so moving forward, if we want to be able to complete projects, I think a number one rule of mine is to not have it be a roller coaster in levies, not have it be stagnant at a 1 or a 2, is we want to level that out so we don't have a year like this where we have taxpayers getting a shock, or even myself getting a shock that we have to do something like this with wages, so that we level that out and we're more consistent. That just doesn't help with the taxpayers and the transparency on how we're doing the budget, but that also will help on our planning. And I think that will stem from the strategic plan if we do something like that with the board into the projects for the overall health of the county. So tonight I am asking for approval of the final budget for 2024. So the net levy would be $38,169,727. However, I would ask that the numbers on this page, the 2024 proposed levy, these numbers all be included in the motion for approval. So when I submit the document to the Department of Revenue, all these numbers are justified.
Would you repeat that? Which numbers you want all
I
included, you
think
said?
it was slide 3.
3?
Yep,
That includes the use of the
reserves. Yep.
reserves and. Okay.
Yep. And the other handout that we have tonight, getting all my pages screwed up here, is this document here. You have that in your handout. This is just more of a spreadsheet, a breakdown of the last 4 years, goes back to 2020, for revenues and expenditures, and then it goes by department. What the difference, increase or decrease the differences between, in comparison between each department. And then it goes into the funds. That was that graph that we talked about, that's included in there. And then the final quasi-governmental requests as well. I'm not gonna go page by page, line by line by this one. That's all for your documentation that you can have along with that IFS report. Not that you're gonna go line by line with that IFS budget report either. However, that's good documentation to have on hand if you do have a question on anything. So Mr. Chair, do you want to do public comment now?
Questions over there?
Why don't we allow the board to ask questions at this point, and then we'll invite anybody from the public that wishes to speak at that point. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Berg.
Yes, I just have a couple questions. On one of the pages, and we've talked before about this, but the public safety grant was 927,000, and we haven't had that before. Is that going to be an ongoing type of grant from now on, or did that replace something else?
No, I don't know how long. Supposedly year one and year two.
Okay.
Same with housing.
Okay.
Year one and year two, but when people change down at the legislature, you can't really guarantee much. But we're hoping that we continue receiving some of those state aid funding dollars.
Well, we're very lucky we got that, as well as you mentioned, we're very fortunate with so many different funding streams, and very fortunate to get some very good funding streams to help us to be where we're at.
Yep, and we're able, with public safety aid dollars, we'll be able to purchase some cameras that we didn't have to budget for. We are looking at our capital equipment needs. So each department head, when we start working on the budget, they submit 2 years worth of their capital equipment needs. And there's some equipment needs within the public safety realm that we'll be able to possibly purchase to offset that 2025 budget. I know Sheriff Tellefson has been working with Mel Odens on some other ideas that we could purchase signage or road mapping, things like that, within those dollars as well.
Okay.
None of those dollars have been spent because we had to accurately budget for it in '24, but we don't know when we'll receive those funds. It could be December 31st of 2023, or it could be early mid-year 2024. We don't really know yet.
Okay.
But yes, that's in Fund 880, along with the housing state aid dollars and the homeless state aid dollars are in, and I'm sorry, not Fund 880, Department 880.
May I continue, please? Yeah, I really appreciate your comments about looking at goals and options as we go forward with this, and your concern about the cost going up. And this is probably, since I've been on the board, it's only been 5 years, but this is the highest amount we had to take out of reserves. Luckily, we have good reserves to do that. But this was not the first year neither. We've been taking out of reserves for several years. And so some of those numbers that look like really low increases, they were also helped out as well.
Correct.
So we do have that, but we do need to cut back from that. And as you said too, as well as looking at staffing and workforce, being at the Association of Minnesota Counties Conference too, I had a chance to talk to a lot of other counties as well as you and other board members too. There's other counties really are looking at hiring freezes and so forth moving forward with the costs. And we do have a lot of expenditures up to now. And with ARPA dollars, we were lucky to have all those funds plus the other two COVID dollar amounts, which were still quite large, that we had for the last few years. But now we're going to see the repercussions, as you were saying, that we use those, but now they're going to be gone. And there's some positions or whatever that's going to go on the levy for next year. I did have a question, and I just actually dawned on me now. You're looking at 2025. That's fabulous, and even you got 26 down there. Do you know off the top of your head? You looked at the increases. What percentage did you use or come to on those?
On the 2025 and.
Yeah, versus this year.
Well, just to be clear, I think what's shown here is wages.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't put in any other budget numbers because we don't really know.
Oh,
We won't know what.
Right, though, that was your goal as a percentage here, though, right? Like this year, the payroll would be 41,406,000, and then next year you thought it would be 43,075, right?
Through the HR program, we are able to go out.
Okay.
They had to build tables, and then we're able to go out, so it does reflect anybody getting a step increase as well as a COLA and figured in there.
Okay.
So that's where we're able to get the figure.
That's where and so that's an increase of 4% or something, or
I would say between 2 and 4.
2 and 4. Okay, that makes sense.
Right. But that doesn't mean that's what the overall.
Overall, no, exactly.
I'm hesitant to
That's just
say
one
that
part
number
of
out
it.
loud. That's why I'm going to say 2 to 4. I'm hesitant to say that and put it on the record, but I did. But I want a disclaimer in there that doesn't mean that
That
is
the
what the
levy's going
county
up that
levy then will be
percent. No,
in 25
exactly
and
not.
26. I
Exactly.
don't ever, Yeah, 25 and 26. I don't ever want to pigeonhole and put that number out there that this is what they said that number will be.
And I'm glad you, if I may, glad you clarified that, because I did not mean that.
Yes,
That's
okay.
what you're
Yep.
talking about, yeah.
But yeah, it's roughly within there just
Yep.
because of that's
Sure.
the COLA
You
that's
could
already built
Spread
in.
it out with the computer, good.
But, correct, but yeah, when we look at FTEs, one full-time position is anywhere between 100 and 130,000, including health insurance and benefits. So we budget for that, but not all employees will take our health insurance either.
Can I interrupt you a second?
Yep.
I just saw another funding source we have. I think we have to ask the guy behind you.
He is a very, very hard guy to run down.
Yeah,
He earned a gift.
Thank you.
okay. Very good.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too. Sorry.
That's okay.
And I think you answered all my
I,
questions.
it's not a, I could see somebody and I was like, everybody was looking behind me. I got a little nervous.
We
Like,
need a little,
is everything okay?
yeah. Oh, you handled that well. I have no more questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
I hope this is good information as, my first not quite full year here. To me, if I was given a spreadsheet, I would want to look over this and then come back to Karen or myself with questions. And so for a presentation, I hope it explained kind of the storyline of what we were doing with the budget. And then going back to what I talked about at the September 5th board meeting is, to me, I really want to tell this story, and the story was that it's the wage-driven budget. We listened to employees. I listened to them from February to August, and this was their biggest ask. And we did that to the best of our ability. And I would say I commend the board for taking that leap of the staff recommendation to doing these wages. I know staff are extremely appreciative and thankful and grateful for the adjustments that we have done. I have been extremely transparent with them, and we have two department heads in the room, three, Mark, that we talk about it, that going further into 25 and 26, we have to be cautious of what we're looking at in the budget, and really fine tune 2024. And that is where we'll be able to find maybe some growth or some inefficiencies or efficiencies. So.
Mr. Chair, oh,
Go ahead.
I don't mean to dominate this, sorry.
No, go ahead.
And just really kind of piggyback on your comments of being cautious too, and I really appreciate that. And I'm just thinking, as we move through this year coming up now, we have several projects that were capital improvements type of things, and that we take our time, finally approving those, maybe closer to the end to see how things are coming out as we go along. And you were on board with that. But I just want to share with the other commissioners, I would think they would be too.
Yes. Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kelsey, you mentioned, and as did Commissioner Berg, the use of certain reserves. And reserves have been used over as far back as I know, to lower the levy to whatever level is needed. Now, this is maybe a little more than what we typically do, but if I'm not mistaken, there are some standards that the state uses to tell you if your reserve amounts are too robust or not healthy enough. Do we know right now with all of this where we may fall in that? If not, that's fine.
We have unaudited numbers, so
Right.
actually at the next board meeting, I wanted our auditors here at the second board meeting in November. That did not work, so they will be here at the next board meeting on the 19th to go over the unofficial audit numbers. But typically, you should have 3 to 5 months of reserves, and we have, not in every fund.
Right.
Let me rephrase that. We have 3 to 5 months in every fund. Now, in some funds, we have more than that recommended amount. So that is where Karen and I did feel comfortable with using some of these reserves based off the 2022 final audit numbers, because we're going through 23. Sorry, I was a year off here. And then so now when CLA comes at the next board meeting, that'll give us an idea going into 2024.
And the reason I asked that question, of course, is that if our reserves are too robust, it means we probably should be doing something with that funding. Because
Absolutely.
that has come from the public.
Yes, absolutely you should. I know some counties will do building projects. Some counties will do wage adjustments. But I don't ever want to get to that point because then that's more of a burden to the taxpayer. So we want to stay, like I said earlier, I would really like to stay consistent with our levies and not get to that point where we see the peaks and valleys.
Thank you.
Yep.
I guess I don't have a question. I'm the newbie, so I'll be real honest about it. But I mean, when Kelsey handed me this, I about fell over. You about want to crawl because you just could spend hours on this. But I do really appreciate when you break it out in the presentation you did tonight and the smaller copies. To me, it really just summarizes what we really need to know. And it makes it a lot clearer than just getting handed this and going, well, figure it out. So, and I guess I want to compliment staff and you especially. I mean, this is a big undertaking for somebody that's just coming in here new. I know you have experience from past, but I mean, it's a big ask to put a budget together for the first year, and especially with the changes in the wages and stuff like that. So I want to thank staff and you for the work that's been done on this, because I think it's been a hard one to do, but I feel very content with what you put together. And especially going, like Corky said, when you hear what a lot of these other counties are at, I think you've done a good job of being fair and yet being close to not making it a big deal of 10% or 13% we heard some counties are at. And I mean, I think 5% is a very doable thing. It's going to add a little cost to everybody, but that's kind of the name of the game for every industry you're in right now is there's increases. So I think we've done a good job to do the best we can for our constituents and keep it not too high by using some of the reserve money so they don't get hammered with it all in one year, but yet also be thinking for the future. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I will just mirror what you said. I couldn't have done this without Karen Anderson and Karen Dahlman, the two gals sitting at that table. I probably, in my previous county, I don't think I ever spent this much time on the budget because we did such last minute changes in September, at that September 5th meeting, because the wages were approved, the health insurance was approved, and that the preliminary levy was approved without final numbers of wages. And so there were many afternoons that I would come in Monday and I would have a full page of questions for Karen Anderson to give me some history on where we are at with the budget. So I agree with you and echo that. The staff that we have been phenomenal, and for Lisa Weiss and Connie Mort for figuring out that health insurance and the wage table, phenomenal numbers. They worked on that for months and came up with a good, solid recommendation to bring to the board, and that I think that's something to really be proud of.
Mr. Chair.
Corky.
Thank you. I also thank you and the staff. There's a lot of time and work put in this, very much so. I think Commissioner Anderson brought up a good point and something I was thinking about. I'm somewhat familiar with the budgets, and I still spent several hours with you going through it and to understand it even more. But a new person coming on, and even some existing people, it's a whole different kind of budget that people are not used to when they come from the private sector. And you get into government budgets and all the different funding streams. To piggyback on that question then, I was wondering if it'd be possible, or just make a suggestion, if we could have, we get quarterly reports on the budget progress throughout the year. And
That's already in the works.
And that we could meet as a board as a work session, for example, and just to look at the budget, how we're doing, but then just to go through some of the stuff to ask the different questions. So, I mean, that's one of our primary responsibilities as a commissioner, and that really would be good education.
Yeah, so one thing Karen and I have talked about is doing a quarterly financial report to the board.
Fantastic.
And so it wouldn't go in the weeds as much as a work session, but that is something that we could explore, but it would give a high-level overview of where we're at per that quarter.
that would be good.
So, anything else for you?
No, sir.
So I would tie a couple of comments together too. And I had the same suggestion that Corky did about taking a little deeper dive into how we get where we're at. And, I'm going to put my business hat on for just a minute here because we started out the beginning of the week, the last few years with CARES dollars and ARP dollars and stimulus funds, people had in their pocket. We've seen a couple of tremendous years, but we knew it wasn't going to be sustainable at the level that it was at. And so as I look at this budget, and I look for 2024, and I have no concerns over 24, but I do have some serious concerns looking forward because of what these salaries are. If you look to 2026 to see what the salary jump will be in 2026. And like the stimulus dollars that our customers no longer have, some of those dollars that we got from ARP and CARES and whatever are also going to be probably not there. We hope that county program aid keeps increasing, and other currently funded mandates that could become unfunded, but it's something that we really have to be aware of as we move forward and look down the road, 2 and 3 years. And so by having these conversations and by perhaps taking a little deeper dive after the first of the year or into the spring, we can look a little bit further down the road, and I look forward to doing that. I would agree that there was a lot of work put into this because we hadn't ratified our first negotiations before we had to get the proposed levy out, and so we were making some assumptions and some speculations, and now we have some fairly good numbers to work with. So thanks again for everybody who's taken part in that. And so we'll, after the first of the year, I look forward to looking at that a little. One of the questions I had before we move on, though, we talked about the revenue with the funds, the different funds, and the amount of money that are in the funds, not specifically, but that 3 to 5 months, and in some cases more than that. Are all of those funds discretionary, or are some of them directed funds that can only be used for certain things?
Some are and some aren't. I don't have that list in front of me, but I could get you that list of the funds that are up for discussion or can be used, restricted. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for.
That's the word I wanted to,
restricted.
yep.
I don't have that list, but I could get you that list and email that out of the restricted and non-restricted funds. We don't really have that many. It's not necessarily might be funds, but there's some restricted dollar amounts as well. But I'll get that for you.
Yeah. One of them, I think of it as we passed, 5 years ago now, the local option sales tax. I think that can only be used for transportation purposes, correct?
Correct. I know there's been talk at the legislature that they are wanting to expand that into jail and law enforcement projects, but I don't, who knows what that will transpire.
So would that be an example of a restricted fund?
Not within the auditors, no. I don't believe so. I'd have to pull our audit,
I think it would be under the road and bridge account.
but I don't think it'd be restricted. I could actually, if you give me a
Well, we
second
can,
here, I
we can
can probably
find that out
get
later.
it.
There are some folks in the audience that have been listening in on this. If anybody wants, unless we have more questions here at the board,
I'll look at that.
does staff have any comments they wish to add? Okay. If you wish to come up and speak about our budget, welcome to come up to the podium, state your name and your address, and share with us your thoughts on our budgeting process or on our budget, period. This is a public hearing. We aren't taking any action on this budget until we close the public hearing. So don't feel like you have to, but if you wish, feel welcome to come forward. And there's somebody walking in the door now. Welcome. We're just wrapping up our public hearing on the truth and taxation, and I just got done inviting people up to I don't know if you got a chance to hear what we discussed. So, again, anybody wish to come forward? Then I'm going to entertain a motion to close the public hearing. I'd
Do we have to keep it open?
entertain a motion to, pardon me?
We don't have to keep it open until, okay.
Do you wish to move to close the hearing?
I so moved. to-
Commissioner Berg moves to close the public hearing. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. So the public hearing is closed. And we can do this, we can affirm this at the next meeting then? Or we can open up the Candy Ohio County Board.
Yeah, if nobody else is coming
We
up.
continued it earlier. I think we did, didn't we?
So typically, the county board has approved adopted the levy for 2024 tonight.
But we can't do it during the public hearing process of it. so
Right,
we have-
yep,
We
okay,
have to be in regular session.
Okay.
So
Correct.
I will open up the truth and taxation session. All right, so we have a 2024 proposed levy in front of you. We can accept it as it is, or we can lower it. We cannot raise it at this point. I would entertain a motion to accept the proposed 2024 levy.
Mr. Chair, I will move forward the 2024 budget as presented by staff.
Commissioner Gardner moves on the proposed 2024 levy, making it affirmed. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
Commissioner Berg seconds it. Any further discussion or questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that the large overview of all of this increase is driven by inflation and wages, primarily, beyond anything else. I don't believe there's a lot of fluff in this budget. What we've done and what staff has initiated and has done a fabulous job of is recognizing that we have staffing issues in terms of hiring and retention. That has been addressed. We had non-competitive health insurance dollars that our employees had to pay, and by resetting that alone amounts to quite a bit of extra take-home for our employees. In fact, my understanding is that more people are able to participate in our health insurance program now because of this reset. And we proactively looked at resetting the wage scale and proactively raising rates. That's something that we did as a board upon recommendation of the staff. And all of those things are in recognition of the fact that our paid professional employees are the single biggest asset that our county possesses. If not for them, and all of the different things that we demand of them, all of the different certifications and degrees that they have to have, and all of the tough work that they do. This recognizes, I believe, that Candy Ohio County values them, and this is really simple economics. If you have a workforce that is properly valued and assessed, you're going to have less turnover, you're going to keep folks here longer, and you are not going to be continually having a lot of turnover. Because that costs more money than it costs to retain people. So kudos to the board as a whole, to you, Kelsey, to everybody else on this. You guys who worked on it on the financial side, our HR folks, everybody who had a hand in this. I think it's a fabulous piece of work, and I'm more than happy to support it.
So we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'm going to close the Candy Ohio County Board of Truth and Taxation meeting. Thank you. Thank you for coming, folks.